Good afternoon, children. In today's class, we are going to learn the seventh chapter of your textbook, Glimpses of India. So, the seventh chapter is divided into three sections: A Baker from Goa by Lucia Rodriguez, Coorg by Lokesh Abrol, Tea from Assam by Arup Kumar Datta. So, it's a travelogue based chapter, children, where you will learn some facts about the lifestyle of people in Goa, Coorg and Assam. So first section is A Baker from Goa. This is a pen portrait of a traditional Gond village baker who still has an important place in his society. It's written by Lucio Rodriguez, a great Konkani essayist. She wrote essay in English and Konkani and served as a professor of English in Mumbai and Goa. Her main works are Of Soil and Soul, Konkani Folk Tales, and she died on 1973. Our elders are often heard reminiscing nostalgically about those good old Portuguese days. The Portuguese and their famous loaves of bread. Those eaters of loaves might have vanished, but the makers are still there. We still have amongst us the mixers, the molders, and those who bake the loaves. Those age-old, time-tested furnaces still exist. The fire in the furnaces has not yet been extinguished. So children, from Goa, we are learning about a baker, okay, one who bakes breads and all. As you know, Goa was under the Portuguese rule, and it is a custom which was followed from their time onwards, okay. So in this chapter, the author discusses about the nostalgic memory of the bakers who used to mix and mold and bake loaves of breads. The thud and jingle of the traditional baker's bamboo heralding his arrival in the morning can still be heard in some places. Maybe the father is not alive, but the son still carries on the family profession. These bakers are even today known as patter in Goa. During our childhood in Goa, the baker used to be our friend, companion, and guide. He used to come at least twice a day. Once, when he set out in the morning on his selling round, and then again when he returned after emptying his huge basket. The jingling thud of his bamboo woke us up from sleep, and we ran to meet and greet him. Why was it so? Was it for the love of the loaf? Not at all. The loaves were brought by some Pasquin or Bastien, the maid servant of the house. What we longed for were those bread bankers, which we chose carefully. Sometimes it was sweet bread of special make. So children, here the author says that during his childhood days and all, they used to wake up by the heralding sound, okay. He used to have the sound, okay, the jingling third sound of the baker coming, and the author used to wake up by hearing this sound. And even though the father baker dies, the son used to follow this profession. And they are called peda in Goa. And in childhood, the baker used to be their friend, companion, and guide. Underline that sentence, children. And the baker used to come at least twice a day. Once when he set out in the morning for selling the breads, and in the evening after selling the all bread in the basket. So the jingling thud of his bamboo sound woke everyone, and all of them ran to meet and greet him. So the author says that it was not for the love of bread, okay, because the bread was usually brought by the maid servant, okay, called Pasquin or Bastien, okay. Actually, they used to go for the bread bankers, which they themselves used to choose very carefully, and it was very sweet as well. The baker made his musical entry on the scene with jang jang sound of his specially made bamboo staff. One hand supported the basket on his head, and the other banged the bamboo on the ground. He would greet the lady of the house with good morning, and then place his basket on the vertical bamboo. We kids would be pushed aside with a mild rebuke, and the loaves would be delivered to the servant. But we would not give up. we would climb a bench or a parapet and peep into the basket. Somehow, I can still recall the typical fragrance of those loaves. Loaves for the elders and the bankers for the children. Then we did not even care to brush our teeth or wash our mouths properly. And why should we? Who would take the trouble of plucking the mango leaf for the toothbrush? And why was it necessary at all? The tiger never brushed his teeth. Hot tea could wash and clean up everything so nicely after all. So children, he says his experience that the baker used to have a very musical entry, and he used to have the basket on his head, and he used to have a bamboo staff, okay, bamboo stick in his hand, and he used to make the sound on the ground, and he will greet the lady of the house with good morning, and he will place that basket on the vertical bamboo. So the kids know they will make attempt to have a look or take the loaves, but the servants know they will ask them to leave, but the children will not give up. They will climb a bench or a parapet to look at the basket. So there were the loaves of bread for the elders and the bankers for the children. So the children know they do not even care to brush their teeth because they are of the opinion that when the tigers don't brush the teeth, and the hot tea was enough to wash and clean up everything so nicely. Marriage gifts are meaningless without the sweet bread known as the bowl, just as a party or a feast loses its charm without bread. Not enough can be said to show how important a baker can be for a village. The lady of the house must prepare sandwiches on the occasion of her daughter's engagement. Cakes and bolinas are a must for Christmas as well as other festivals. Thus, the presence of the baker's furnace in the village is absolutely essential. The baker or bread seller of those days had a peculiar dress known as kabai. It was a single piece long frock reaching down to the knees. In our childhood, we saw bakers wearing a t-shirt and trousers which were shorter than full-length ones and longer than half pants. Even today, anyone who wears a half pant which reaches just below the knees invites the comment that he's dressed as like a padder. So now the author is emphasizing on the importance of breads in a village or of a baker in a village. See, marriage gifts were so meaningless without a sweet bread. It was known as bowl. And a party and a feast will lose its charm without bread. And it shows the importance of a baker in a village. The lady of the house has to prepare sandwiches for the occasion of her daughter's engagement. And they need cakes and bolinas for Christmas. So the presence of a baker's furnace was very essential. And in those days, the baker or the bread seller, they were dressed, had a dress, and it was known as kabai. Actually, it's a single piece long frock, and it will reach down to the knees. And in his childhood, he saw bakers wearing a shirt and trousers, shorter than full-length ones and longer than half pants. And even today, somebody who is wearing a half pant which reaches just below the knees, he will have a comment that he is dressed like a padder. The baker usually collected his bills at the end of the month. Monthly accounts used to be recorded on some wall in a pencil. Baking was indeed a profitable profession in the old days. The baker and his family never starved. He and his family and his servants always looked happy and prosperous. Their plump physique was an open testimony to this. Even today, any person with a jackfruit-like physical appearance is easily compared to a baker. So the author further concludes the section by saying that the baker collected his bills, the amount, by the end of the month, and it was usually recorded in a wall with pencil, and it was a profitable profession in those days because a baker and his family never starved, and his family and servants always looked happy and prosperous. The author makes a very funny remark that the plump physique was an open testimony to this. Actually, a person with a jackfruit-like physical appearance is always compared to a baker. Okay, children, so that's all about the chapter. So we learned about a baker from Goa. So children, let's recollect some important points. The main points of the lesson, a baker from Goa. The author recalls the days when he was a little child and lived in Goa. The Portuguese had left Goa, but their famous loaves of bread were still light. The sons still carried on the profession of their fathers. The arrival of the baker in the morning can still be heard. He comes with a basket on his head and with a jingling bamboo in his hand. The thud and jingling of his bamboo wakes the children, and they go running to him. The baker comes with loaves of bread for elders and bread bankers for children. The author remembers how, as a child, he used to go running at the sound of the baker's arrival. He can still recall the typical fragrance of those bread bankers. He would anxious to eat them with hot tea. He didn't think it necessary to brush his teeth. The tiger never brushed his teeth. He says humorously. The baker is an indispensable part of the Goan life. No party, marriage, or religious ceremony can be possible without his presence. In the old Portuguese days, the baker had a typical dress. It was called a cabai, a single-piece frock reaching below the knees. In the days of author's childhood, the bakers wore a shirt and a half pant that reached below the knees. The bakers used to be very well-to-do, happy, and prosperous. They were known for their plump physique. So children, that's all about the chapter, A Baker from Goa.
Here is the summary of the story Glimpses of India, A Baker from Goa by Lucio Rodrigues. Elders of Goan community fondly remember the Portuguese rulers of Goa and their appetite for bread. The author remarks that even though the Portuguese are gone, the ones who knead, shape and bake the bread, that is the bakers, are still alive. Despite changing times, the baker or peda remained an essential figure in the Goan community. The author remembers with fondness the jingling thud of bamboo stick announcing the baker's arrival. He would pass by their house at least twice a day. He would balance the bread basket on his head with one hand while banging the bamboo stick with the other hand. As children, they used to rush out of the house and greet the baker. What they were looking for were bread bangles, a traditional Goan bread shaped like rings which the baker sold along with loaves for the adults. The baker would greet the lady of the house. The children would then be pushed aside so that the baker could hand over the loaves to the servant. Undaunted, the children would climb up a bench to take a peep into the basket. They would not wait to brush their teeth to eat the bread. After all, there was hot tea with bread to clean up everything nicely. From a personal anecdote, the author moves on to the peda's integral role in the Goan community. Marriage gifts in the Goan community were incomplete without the traditional sweetbread known as bol. For engagements, mothers were expected to prepare sandwiches for their guests. For Christmas or other festivals, cakes and bolinhas, that is traditional coconut cookies, were essential. In the old days, bakers wore a special long frock which reached their knees. This dress was known as the cabai. The author remembers the trademark knee-length trousers worn by the baker of his childhood. Even now, if anyone wore trousers reaching to his knees, he invited the comment of being dressed like a peda. Bakers, in their glory days, also used to make a lot of money. Their plump bodies were proof of their profitable profession. The author humorously remarks that even now, anyone with a healthy appearance was still compared to a baker.